Let me first say, on a busy day that we hope is going to be one of our last days, how much I appreciate senators cutting their lunch very short, rushing back here for this meeting. The reason I went ahead and held it now is the bill we're going to bring up here in just a moment is double referred to myself and to appropriations, and in working with Senator Hobson, I'm trying to get this ahead of his meeting so that he'll have this to be able to take up. But I'm going to go ahead and call up House Bill 1795, which is a COVID-related workforce development bill. You remember a couple weeks ago we brought up COVID workforce development as a bill in our chamber. We passed it off the floor. The House amended that bill, put other language in it, sent it back in a different form, and so we had to start the process over. We passed a separate bill this time on the freezing of the employment rate. What you have in front of you is the workforce development and distribution that will happen to the community and junior colleges. But I'm going to walk you through it since this is new language and just kind of explain everything to you here. But in Section 1, we changed the amount, or the House did on their side, from the $50 million that we talked about before to $55 million. In Section 2, it goes into the first $49 million of that. The first $49 billion of that in Section 1 shall be used for purchasing equipment, expanding training capability and or capacity, including but not limited to a number of different things. These other different things include vehicles, devices, short-term tuition and or vouchers for providing some, for example, CNA nursing training vouchers, healthcare training to meet certain things, and I'm still working through Section 2 here. On line 51, enhancing the necessary infrastructure to increase capacity and or capability in the workforce development and or expanding spaces to allow or upgrade training equipment. What the House did in their language is they wanted to be more broad in definitions, but in leaving in the provisions to allow it to not be limited to certain things. I think it meets the intent of the CARES Act, and it will give our CJCs a wide range of things that they can use this for. I know my co-chair on the other side, Representative Donnie Bell, reached out to Cindy Hyde-Smith's office for some clarification on the use of some of this. We want to certainly make sure that it's used appropriately, and so that's where some of this comes from. But if we move down into the actual distribution, we wanted to put in there so that you can kind of tell your CJCs the amount they'll be getting, specific numbers on this. These numbers, I went through yesterday. Senator Rita Sparks and I did some work on this, and we wanted to verify that all this information was correct. And so what this is distribution based on the current WIOA distribution model. So the way that is figured or calculated is the CJCs base the amount that they get on the training programs that they have. And so both Senator Parks and I were able to reach out through some of our CJC presidents yesterday, and we got detailed graphs and things. They looked back over 3 years at the training projects, and they determined the percentage of those that are used, and they put it into a model to figure how that's going to be distributed. I have one of our CJC presidents with us here today, but between Rita, myself, and clarification, we reached out to all 15 CJC presidents yesterday, confirmed that this is the model they use and that those percentages would distributed the money in this way. So it's not an act by the legislature to pick numbers, it's the model that they use and the numbers that they have. So if we move to line 95, $4,700,000 of the money shall be distributed for basically on-the-job training for displaced employees. If you remember on the floor yesterday, Senator David Jordan had some good comments on the use of perhaps on-the-job training funds. I think this is some good use of that money that hopefully will put some people into some needed positions. Line 105, $550,000 or 1% will be used for the administrative portion by MDES, which will be the fiduciary for the money. And in line 109, another $550,000 will be used for the 4 workforce development regions to administer the program as well. This started out as a higher amount than that. In my bill originally, I had a lower amount, but this is the language we were able to kind of work out with the House on the administration of it. Moving on to Section 3, none of the funds shall be distributed by MDS until the Workforce Investment Area certifies to the department that first priority is for the furloughed, unemployed, or underemployed who have been a victim of the COVID emergency. That language continues in different forms all the way through Section 3. In 140, Section 4, this is just to clarify that the same applies to the on-the-job training portion of the money. In Section 5, it's just language that says that MDS will comply with the CARES Act provisions. And as we move to Section 6, it says that MDS will certify compliance to the Department of Finance and Administration. And lastly, Section 7, it just states that the money appropriated in this act shall be paid by the state treasurer out of any money in the budget contingency fund. Let me just say on this, the importance of this as I feel it, and I've stated this on the floor of the Senate already. We have a number of people we're trying to get back to work. Our CJCs are the vehicle to provide some of this training and resources. There's several different apparatuses in place where we're getting them assistance, and I think this is a good way to get money all over the state to meet that need. So with that, I'll yield for any questions.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
So I want to be sure I understand this correctly. Three senators here. We represent a very industrialized area of the state.
Right.
And so I want to be sure any company or an individual that's been furloughed or terminated can go to the community colleges and receive training. That's what the purpose of this is.
Right. And
so they can receive training and return to the workforce.
Right.
What about companies that want to repurpose employees to allow them new duties or new jobs within their so they're already employed, or they were furloughed and they've been come back and their business model has changed and they need training? Would that qualify?
First priority is going to be given to someone who is out of employment as a result of COVID. The language in here, I think, will allow someone who is maybe certainly the unemployed would be first. Then the underemployed, we're going to have a group of people who, maybe had a position that has been changed as a result of this. Anybody who's directly displaced by COVID would come first. But then if there's some more resources left after that, I think the things the CJCs do with that, for example, getting equipment, doing other things like that, would then allow those other people to be trained on that. But we have to be careful that we want to make sure this CARES money is intended to go to people who were affected by COVID first and foremost. But I do think, to your point, there will be that residual benefit that is then passed on to the community as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for answering my questions.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norwood.
Chairman, the distribution of these funds is based on a predetermined formula, and I think it's based on the programs that they're program by program participants at the particular community college.
Yes, sir. There's in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, the federal act, there's a there's kind of a model they follow, and so what they kind of do on this here is they base it on several different things, and I've got some specifics here that give percentages, but they look back over 3 years and they look at the programs that have been provided, and then they come up with a representative portion of those, because you may have some community colleges, for example, in Senator McMahon's district, that have a high number, of these programs, and you have some that may not have as much. So they try to weight it so that the money's reaching the people who need to be trained first and foremost. So this is, again, a formula that came to me from the CJC presidents, and this is the model they use for other monies during the year. We're just following that same model.
So my second question would be, I guess I should feel comfortable that what Hines Community College is, that is based, that there's a basis for the numbers that the college
Right.
has. I guess my other question is, now, are we basing this, are we also looking at the affordability of possibilities in terms of making sure that these individuals are being trained in areas where they can receive employment rather than just go through a training?
Right. You know,
I noticed at CNA, and I think the one that I noticed, CNA, the forklift, I know those are pretty, widespread.
yeah.
I was looking at also what Continental Tire and companies like that, being able to tie into them to make
Right.
training individuals for employment at those.
The language is giving rather wide latitude to the CJCs. You know, as I've expressed before, I think they're a partner, in workforce development. I think most of the money in the state eventually flows down to them to meet those purposes. So I trust that in areas like yours, if that particular company needs that that type of training, that the CJCs in that area will provide that service.
And the extent of the resources, the money will expire, or is it?
We need to spend it by the end of the year, unless they change the provisions again. There's also some continued rumor that there could be another incentive that's passed, and when we come back in October, we might very well be looking at some other resources. But this is the allocation that we have at this time. Senator Polk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at Section 6, number 2B, as a businessman, I've got to ask this question. It says the Employment Security Commission, if it misspends the funds, according to the OIG office, they must pay it back. Since Employment Security gets the vast amount of their funding through unemployment insurance tax, is it possible that if they misspend money, that I, as a business owner, and the businesses in Mississippi would be basically responsible for them to be able to pay that back? How is that going to work?
That's a good point. I think that's one of the reasons that we went ahead and Senate Bill 3051 and we froze the general and the workforce experience rate at least through the end of the year, because my hope is that we're going to have some good scrutiny and oversight on this, but we who have served for several years like you and I have, we need to be watching this close. And so my intent is to try to watch this to my best ability and make sure they're reporting to us. But
There's nothing here that would prevent that from happening.
I don't think there's anything in any of the COVID language that I've seen for either the municipalities or the counties. I think there's always that chance that it could come back on someone.
Well, and I understand that, Mr. Chairman.
I would work very hard to make sure it did not come back on the people who were not involved in making that happen.
But working very hard and seeing that it doesn't happen are two different things, Mr. Chairman. Thank
You
you.
are correct. Point taken. Any other questions?
Have a motion.
For motion?
Vital sufficient do pass.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment
Sorry, we've
first.
got, I'm sorry. Senator Polk, if, could I express one thing on this?
Sure.
There is a movement right now to try to move the calendar quickly. This is a double referred bill. If we were to amend it, we'd then have to send it to appropriations. Then the bill would have to go back to the House. I feel that at this stage, an amendment would maybe jeopardize the passage of the bill. And I certainly don't want to see the CJCs miss out on this funding. So I'll be glad to entertain, your amendment, but I do think that might put the bill in jeopardy.
I won't make the amendment, but I'm very disappointed that this isn't more clear. And I'll say that on the floor.
I understand. Are there any other questions or amendments? For motion, Senator McMahon?
Vital sufficient do pass.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Bill will be reported. Thank you.